gives me much pleasure to declare the Kingston Power Station open.
Royalty, however, had at first played a secret role in a wide opposition movement to the central London power stations.
Dear Mr. Chamberlain, the King is sorry to trouble you when you must be so very busy. His Majesty feels the greatest concern at the erection of an enormous generating station at Battersea, and London being polluted by large quantities of noxious fumes.
Battersea was the first real environmental battle of the modern age.
This will kill every green thing within 2 miles of Battersea, rot all the buildings, and bleach all the babies.
The battle was lost because local government insisted a new device would remove the smoke menace. But when the device was installed, it only made matters worse.
Sometimes it would just simply like overflow with smoke. It would come out, pour out, and just simply tumble down to the ground. Obviously in other days it would go straight up. But basically that was the big problem. It just covered the area. It was like a fountain, for want of a better term, I suppose. And it just would gush out all over the place.
I want to take this opportunity to congratulate all who have been responsible of the fine example of British enterprise, skill, and work.
In 1930 there came a warning from Belgium. Yellow fog choked 74 people to death in the Meuse Valley. An official inquiry compared the effects to poison gas warfare and warned that smoke from Battersea could lead to lethal fogs.
The public services might be faced with the responsibility of 3,200 sudden deaths if such a phenomenon occurred in London.
But most British politicians were not sympathetic to reducing London's smoke.
Although I may be told that the smoke from my coal fire assists in poisoning the people outside, I prefer that very much to being poisoned myself by a gas fire in my own home.
If the government needed any more warning, it came in 1948 from a small town 7,000 miles away. In Donora, Pennsylvania, industrial smoke and polluted fogs had killed off the vegetation, so that when it rained, the graveyard was washed away and the dead came out of the ground.
Bits of bodies would wash out when, after a bad storm, they would come floating down on the road. When the rain got bad and washed down, why, it would take parts of them with it.
But the real horror came in the winter of 1948. The people of Donora will never forget it.
So, I guess everybody here has heard of the smog, right?
It was yellow and thick. You put your hand out, and your hand got that far and you didn't see it. I mean, you saw your arm, but there was no hand. That's how thick it was.
At first, people didn't think much of it because it was just like any other day. You know, days around here were always smoky.
During the day, we took it as a normal reaction in regards to this fog business because we've had it several times.
It was an ugly, yellowy, saffron-colored stuff that made your eyes burn and water.
As the days went on, people started to die.
We had 3 undertakers at that time who were managing to help the people down to the community center, down in the basement, is where they had these cots set up, and they just placed them there. They wouldn't be dead at that time and right away, but they had no possibility of ever helping them. They just had to let them lie there and pass away.
So this event opened the government's eyes, and they saw that they needed to regulate air pollution.
The deaths in Donora in 1948 were the focus of an international conference on air pollution in 1950. Britain's representatives reported back to the government the conference's recommendations: smoke control in local areas.
by establishing smokeless zones. They mark off an area, and within that area, every known remedy is strictly applied. In homes, offices, industry, the installation of any apparatus emitting smoke is strictly prohibited. And what's more, it can be made to work.
Local councils demanded the successful measures be implemented in Britain. 6 months before the disaster, Housing Minister Harold Macmillan refused their demands. Churchill's government had its own agenda, and burning coal was central to it. In 1952, Cabinet was trying to conceal the fact that the country was bankrupt. In the autumn, it was revealed the nation was £500 million in debt. The government moved to pay off its debt with one of the country's remaining assets, stocks from the newly nationalised coal industry. The highest quality coals were being exported overseas. The resulting fuel shortage meant that low-grade smoky coal was being burnt on London's home fires. Pollution warnings were ignored as the government encouraged the country to burn more coal.
And the government give us your coal. I'll still find there's room in cellars for more, so why not stock now?
Many householders, because of storage space, are unable to stock all they want. But here's one housewife who has done so.
As a housewife, I have laid in all the coal I'm allowed this summer, and with coal the price it is now, we are going to make the best use we can of it with one of these new all-night fires.
An all-night fire. If they were used in every house, then the experts say we'd go a long way towards beating the fuel shortage.
To cover against the emergencies which a hard winter could present, every advantage has been taken of the summer months to build up our coal stocks.
In spite of the weather for most of the holiday, people went to the Battersea Fun Fair in vast numbers. Some took their pleasure sedately on the boating lake. They were twirled about in tubs. They careered, shrieking, up and down the Dipper. And not content with that, they were flung around in whirling jet planes, spinning, revolving, upside down, inside out. In fact, they fairly revelled in one glorious, sickening sensation after another. All the fun of the fair and a bit more thrown in for luck.
As usual with the approach of winter, doctors warned Londoners with chest complaints to leave the city.
The people with asthma and bronchitis are the ones who give us the trouble. The fog makes it difficult to help them. When I was in Manchester, the death roll during foggy weather was nearly twice as high as during a normal winter period. Here's your prescription. Now, mind you take it. I say, Doctor.
One of those told to flee the capital was 20-year-old Queenie Bilton, who had recently recovered from pneumonia.
The hospital then said that it was imperative that she got out of London because, you know, with the smog and that, there would be no chance of her surviving.
By the early 50s, John and Queenie had been rehoused to the South Downs.
So we were out of London, free of the smog.
It would be 40 years before Queenie Bilton made the mistake of returning to London. In 1952, Londoners were still celebrating the Festival of Britain.
What a thrill, what a breathtaking performance, positively a screaming success.
We just got rid of the war. Industry was reasserting itself. Tuppenny halfpenny little factories was going up, all jumping on the export market, and everyone was happy. Till the smog come.